What's the stupidest thing someone has argued with you about? I was arguing with this kid whose dad is an army ranger and my dad is a marine. We were arguing in 7th grade about which was better and whose dad was cooler. He was bragging about how many confirmed kills his dad has, and I said, well, my dad lives by working on the defense systems of military planes, and he straight up looks me in the eye and says, well, if your dad is so good at protecting planes, then how come he couldn't stop 9/11 from happening? Like, he was dead serious about that. I'm still baffled to this day. And what made it even worse was that all his friends were crowded around us, and they all went oh 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 h h h h h h h h h h h h h h h h like, how can someone be this slow? I was 10, living in a country where English was a second language. A classmate was passing around a note which was something like, can we share color pencils? Tick your answer yes. Yep, I'm not sure if this was the question, but basically it was a yes/no question. I had to explain to them that it meant the same thing, but they wouldn't accept it because I was generally quiet and they never listened to me. A few of us argued a bit and it all just boiled down to forget about it. It's just English. Felt like the smartest kid in class after that. Someone owed me money. They paid me and I offered to buy them dinner. I used the cash they paid me back with to pay for the food. They became irate because not only had they paid me back, but they had paid for dinner as well, so they were out twice the money. They could not be convinced they hadn't been taken advantage of. I even drew diagrams and passed real cash back and forth in order to get them to understand what had actually happened. After a while I stopped being frustrated and couldn't stop laughing, which just made them angrier. Once was apartment hunting with a guy I was going to move in with. That day we got in such a bad argument about Elton John's music that we ended our relationship instead. The basis of the argument was this: I said that I liked and appreciated most of his popular songs, but that I found a lot of his non-popular songs to be straight up bad. The guy said that Elton is a master of his trade, and so by definition his music is defined as good. Sounds like your BF made the right choice. My grandfather tried to convince me that trees take all our oxygen and we should cut them all down. He should have put a plastic bag over his head to see if plastic is an alternative oxygen source. Jesus. I think that he read it from the Daily Mail or something equally trash. He went bright red and my grandma started crying at me to stop angering him. Should have just replying in the spirit of the topic. Jesus is an actual oxygen source for human peoples. My 4th grade teacher argued with me because I told some kids in my class that I was adopted. We argued for a good 15 minutes in class before she threatened to call my mom in for a conference. My teacher told me and my mom that there was no way that I was adopted because I look so much like my mom. Unfortunately for her, my mom handed her a few copies of some adoption paperwork at the conference and that shut her up. Long time ago, but my crazy ex was chewing gum, and she kept coming to me to kiss me. As we would kiss, she would try and push the gum into my mouth. Personally, I thought that was a bit ew, and am not a fan of chewing gum anyway, so I kept pulling out. It ended up escalating into a full-blown argument, because apparently it meant I didn't love her, but again, she was crazy. No, Grandma, Alan is not a Muslim name. Check's Irish Scottish name. Same thing, they're all Muslims over there. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Same conversation. Alexander is a Russian name. No, it's popular there, but A, it means defender of men in Greek. B, ever heard of this one Macedonian? When I worked retail, I had to explain to a manager that discounting an item already marked 50% off by an additional 50% would not make the item free. I tried to explain it to him using an item that originally cost $10, but he still did not get it. I just gave up, shook my head, and said, you're responsible for the money in this store. Once had an argument with a few full-grown men about the fact that gravity and magnetism are the same thing. Also with one of the same guys, that our sun is not a star. Could not convince them of either, no matter how many facts and scientific evidence I showed them. They don't wear a seatbelt because if it saved them in an accident they'd be so injured that they probably wouldn't want to survive anyway. One of my good mates used to argue that if you put on your seatbelt you are statistically more likely to be involved in an accident. My stepmom insisted the moon didn't have gravity and the spacesuits held astronauts down to the surface. Look on the bright side. You didn't have to convince her that the astronauts were actually on the moon to begin with. Paul McCartney wrote the theme song of Destiny. It started out as joke, but ended with me being called a conspiracy theorist. Again all over claiming this was the theme song of the game Destiny. This wasn't me, but two of my friends were arguing about whether we share 50% of per DNA with bananas. At one point the friend who thought we did said that people who ate bananas were cannibals. That bees can sting twice. No, they cannot, Oscar. It's wasps. When I was a kid I thought the whole one sting thing also applied to wasps. Whether a light year was a measure of time or distance. I said distance. My husband said time. This turned into a big fight. I once had an argument with my wife about the amount of sugar I drink in my coffee. We have been dating for a couple of years at that point. I was once arguing with a friend of mine who said that if you are pregnant in space you can throw up the baby cause there is no gravity. If you die in your dream, you die for real. He was 30 yo. He's thinking of Teller and Riyadh. In elementary school I ended 2 friendships because someone lied about sitting in a bin full of newspaper. Is the show Ancient Aliens based in facts and a valid theory, or is the whole thing made up for TV? Which one of us was going to take home the empty tequila bottle we shared at the company 4th of July party? If I was Carl or blind or not, she tried telling me I wasn't, but I most definitely am. I think I watched a video where these guys were arguing about the Wicked Witch of the West. That LeBron James is not a superior athlete compared to Conor McDavid. My mom and grandma argue over whether something is an April Fool joke or not. Daily on Twitter, when people insist Naruto can beat Goku. About the fact that the number 4 is the best number of all. They argued with me how to pronounce 2018. Argument about what I said literally a minute previous. That beans are not meat. Dementia in a nutshell. Religious people who think Jesus was white. Why I opened the teapot, yeah I know.